And we are back again to working on these lovely tanks, and today we're going to be focusing on the soil of the 3 tanks behind me, because I wanted to show you what I actually will be using and the bags and the products exactly. So that's what this video will be, and then also I'm cleaning up to then go to Arizona before I properly set these tanks up. So let's go back to then and start. I'm going to start off with cleaning up a little bit. So as I said, I am starting off with cleaning up a little bit. There were some leftover pieces of bark and stuff that I had broken off in like little twigs and just different pieces of wood that I had left over from doing the background. So I went ahead and just broke all of that up into little pieces so I could mix it into the substrate. And then I start cleaning up the whole living room because it's an absolute mess at this point. From doing all the projects, and I don't quite get it finished cleaning it up, but I do end up cleaning it up later. So here we can see I bought peat moss from Lowe's as well as orchid bark, but the orchid bark that does not have Miracle Grow in it. That's very important. And then this sphagnum moss I got on Amazon. So here we have a bunch of what I believe is peat moss. I start off as the base, and then I use some leaves that I sanitize myself just from outside. I generally boil them, and then if I want them to be dry, then I will then bake them, but generally I just boil them and put them in a bag. And then on top of that, I added in sphagnum moss and then the wood dust of what I broke up, as well as just some sand just to kind of add that on in there. It's really not that big of a deal if it's just a little bit. And then here you can see the peat moss is very dry. And then I got all the dirt out of the tanks because I wanted to add in a base layer of charcoal in each of the tanks. So I put some of that dirt back into the thing, and I also added water. And there's also eco earth mixed in. I don't exactly do parts to when I'm mixing things. I kind of just mix it and hope it works for the best. Now I have this plant here that I wanted to add in. This is a bromeliad, and I added in before I went to Arizona, and I'm just putting this in this video because you've already seen the soil mix, and that's basically it as far as the soil mix, except here I specifically added in a good amount of the orchid bark substrate just to make sure that this the soil here wouldn't get super like wet and gross for it. It would more stay drained, so then it wouldn't get super wet and gross, because bromeliads and orchids don't particularly like that. So here we have the tanks now all set up with the doors and the backgrounds, and I have a charcoal layer at the bottom right on top of the drainage layer. And now I'm just going to put them into the corner of the room and clean everything up because I'm going to Arizona for a week at this point. So I had to move them over and just have them here. The bromeliad will get light from the window, and I made sure to water it quite a lot before I left. And for the substrate, I use Eco Earth, as I said. The Eco Earth I generally order on Amazon. The charcoal that I use, which helps the soil not to get like gross and stagnant, I collect that myself because we have a wood burning stove, so sometimes I'll just take coals out and then get them wet so then they're not like super hot, and then I will break that up and use that. Sometimes I boil that as well if I feel like it, but generally it's not needed because it was cooked in the stove. So that's what's going on there. And now that I got everything cleaned up, I have the tanks, and I went ahead and put a light on them, and these are what they look like as of me leaving for a week. And then I'll come back and set them all up, and that'll either be the next video, or maybe I'll do some videos from Arizona in between this and then setting up these tanks. So it appears that I have just one Arizona video, and then I will get back to working on, or get back to producing content on these tanks. I don't know how many videos will be left because it's not just setting them up. I also have to redo the doors, which is what I'm working on currently, real times, and which is months and months later, well into summer even. So, which is, you know, when you guys are watching this video. So I'm not entirely sure what's going to happen there, but I haven't looked that far ahead. I just looked, and it looks like there's just one video from Arizona, because I get to go back and work on that 20-gallon polyudarium that I set up, and I get to change it up a little bit. So that's pretty fun. So let's talk about the soil mix a little bit. So as you can see at the bottom, there was a drainage layer. If you haven't seen the video where I went ahead and set up these 55-gallon vertical tanks, I suggest that you check that out, because I do the drainage layer, and I also make the bottom, like I put glass at the bottom so then they can hold in the soil and become like arboreal vivariums. So the drainage layer is just in a grate box, a grate light diffuser. It's like the white square stuff. Just a box made of that, and then you use zip ties to connect on landscaping fabric or window screen mesh or something. And window screen, you want to use window screen mesh if you have a large animal like a bearded dragon or iguana. The landscaping mesh is fine if you just have like crested geckos, because they're not going to be able to dig through it, but an iguana will easily destroy landscaping mesh, and that's what I've learned from experience. So on top of that, I added in a layer of charcoal, because what charcoal does in like activated carbon, we use it in our aquariums as chemical filtration, because they take out like tannins, and they'll even like remove medicine, and they just take bad things out of the water, and they kind of help clear it up sometimes. So they do the same thing with soil, and they kind of help it from becoming stagnant and gross, and so does the drainage layer. The drainage layer kind of helps separate the water at the bottom a little bit, so then it's just not like mushy dirt, like muddy crap that's making the entire soil wet, which then, you know, would drown eggs if they're laid in there, and kind of ruin up the system. Make it all gross, kill any isopods and worms and stuff, which you don't want that. So the drainage layer separates that out. The charcoal helps keep the dirt clean, and then we have the sphagnum moss and the orchid bark. Now the orchid bark is not something I am fond of, because I can get as much bark as I want, just like sheets of bark. Because we have a wood burning stove, and when we're like doing wood and stuff, the bark often comes off because we have to let the wood sit for like an amount of time so it's no longer green and it's dead before we can burn it. So I can just sanitize those pieces of bark and then break them up, and then bam, that's the same exact thing as the orchid bark. Like it's not even very hard either. It's like it's gonna break up in your hands. Like it's just mulch essentially. So if you wanted to just get mulch, just don't get like natural mulch rather than like don't get dyed mulch, and you don't want to get like spruce or like evergreen mulch or like pine stuff, I don't think, because that can be irritating to the skin and stuff. So you could just do mulch, but in my case, I could just break up bark and throw it in there, which is what I end up doing anyway. But also, I wanted to try out the orchid bark. Not impressed. Not something that I feel like is super important. So generally, when I'm doing soil, I'll get normal topsoil just from a landscaping company, as well as, like I said, just like a naturalistic mulch, and then eco earth from Amazon. I have a small amount of sand from a beach that I collected, which isn't the best idea, because beach sand is kind of dirty generally, because people are at beaches and people are dirty. So not the best idea, but you don't even need to mix in sand. I think sand helps it drain a little bit, but I don't add enough to, I don't know, I have it, so I add a little bit in. And then sphagnum moss and the orchid bark or like large pieces of wood and stuff, they kind of aerate the soil a little bit and help it not just be this like gross, mushy eco earth stuff or just like mud stuff. It more helps create areas and pockets of humidity and stuff that the isopods will enjoy, and then over time they'll break down and kind of make it really rich soil. And that's why I add in like wood dust and stuff, which again is just me breaking up wood and things like that. Then the peat moss is kind of just a filler almost. I don't even know what it's supposed to do, but it keeps it very humid, and it acts a lot like eco earth, except it doesn't clump together as much, I don't think, but you don't want to have it just dry in there because it is super crazy dusty. It's fine in a tropical tank like this, but it is just so very dusty that it's actually pretty bad, because when you're mixing it, the dust all like just goes in the, like I breathe in a lot of the dust, and then I'll blow my nose later and it'll be like this dark crap comes out, which is just dust from peat moss, which is not something I worry about, because I should probably worry about it. That happens to me a lot because I also work with wood and stuff. I'm a woodworker and I build stuff, and a bunch of the sawdust goes in my nose and I just blow it out and it's fine. Same thing with peat moss, but you should probably wear like a mask. I should probably wear a mask, but I'm not going to. So I believe that is all the components of the soil. I don't think I'm missing anything out, or leaving anything out there. So either most of the things I get on Amazon or Lowe's, or I collect myself. Oh, the leaves. I collect leaves myself as well, and those do the same thing as the sphagnum moss and the wood pieces. And together, it kind of comes together to make a rich soil that is moist, but not like super so compact, and like if you just took topsoil and just got it wet, it would just be like mud, and it would be gross and like hard and stuff. It would just be bad. So instead, this soil, you can kind of scoop it around really easily, even when it's wet, and it works really well for them to lay eggs in, and then the eggs will incubate on their own in the enclosures, which is what I do with my crested geckos. So this soil mix is ideal for that, and unfortunately I can't provide any like this part of this. I probably should use more sphagnum moss. I think if I used a heck of a lot more sphagnum moss, that would be a good thing to create more like aerated soil. So then, because I think the isopods break down what I have in the soil pretty quickly, and then it just becomes more of just dirt, and then that can become wet, especially when you spray down the enclosures a lot, and you know there's high humidity in the enclosure, and the drainage layer isn't like super high, it's just like an inch or two, so it kind of keeps it very moist. But the springtails seem to enjoy that, and it doesn't seem to kill off any worms, and it seems to be just fine for the babies to hatch in. So overall, it's worked out really well, and I do recommend what I am doing and what I am using. So that is what I recommend. And also, if you want to get charcoal, but you don't have a wood-burning stove like I do, you can just buy charcoal from like a place like Lowe's or something, but it has to be lumpwood charcoal, not like what you use in your to like grill. Like that is not, there's additive things in those like cube coal pieces that you don't want in your tank. So you want to get lumpwood charcoal, which is just charcoal, and that's what you can use. And you can even mix it into the soil and stuff like that. So I hope that you enjoyed this video, and I hope you found this helpful. If you did, like it down below. If you have any comments or concerns, comments below. And if for more content, then subscribe. Have a fantastic day. It's called spline. That's what it's called. If you didn't watch the last video, you have no idea what I'm talking about, but it's called spline, not spool. Spline.